Hi, I'm Erik from the Real Estate Pessimist podcast. I want you to join Kristi Kandel and I as we talk about boring things. Yeah, this shirt. What does this shirt have to do with being boring? And what is being boring having to do with being wildly successful in real estate? We want to take you there. Please join us on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing, including the boring stuff.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pessimist podcast. I'm Kristi Kandel, a real estate developer, and I also teach locals how to become the developer in their own backyard. Along with that, I have some rental properties, and today I am joined with my co-host, Erik Stenbakken. And before we get started, Erik, what are you wearing?
Oh, that is an excellent question, Kristi. This is my shirt. It was my former identity. For those of you who are listening and can't see it, I'm wearing a gray shirt. This looks like a mechanic shirt. In fact, it is. It came from automotiveworkwear.com. I've got a patch on one side with my name and a patch on the other side that says Stenbakken Media. What's up with that? Well, for over 2 decades, I was a commercial and editorial photographer. And my boss made me wear a uniform. Can you freaking believe that? Every single day I had to wear the same thing. And it had this patch on it. There you go. Okay, yeah. If you're watching on video, you can see the patch. It says Stenbakken Media. And my boss was, of course, relentless about this. And my boss, of course, was me. Why would I do this? It was my own company, and I had custom shirts made. I'm going to show you the back. Check it out. See that?
Oh, okay. Got a logo going and everything. All right.
Yeah, a really big orange S in the back of my shirt. I wanted it to look like a pit crew type of thing.
Yeah.
It's branding. It is branding. Every time I would go on a photo shoot, I would wear this exact same shirt. I have a whole row of these shirts literally in my closet, pressed and ready to go, because it's boring. It's boring. It's the same stinking thing. Every time I go, every client meeting, every photo shoot, every time I get together with a client, they see me wearing this. Now I have other clothes, right? But they would see me wearing this same thing every time. It's so boring. But guess what? I remember sitting at a meeting once and with an art director at an ad agency, and there were other photographers all around. We were all talking about a project. And the art director turned and looked at me and said, and this guy, Erik, is the best branded photographer I have ever met. And I was a little embarrassed for the other photographers sitting there, and I wish he had said he's the best photographer, but whatever, we won't go there. But so he says, hey, look at this. This is what he does. This is what he does. Everybody knew that would see me wearing this. That's what that guy does. Some stranger would walk on set. Who's the photographer? It's probably the guy with the camera with the shirt that says Stenbakken Media, right? It's no mystery. And I did that on purpose. And that's because repetition with focus gets you better. It gets you better and better and better. And if you study anything about habits, I don't care whether you're reading Duhigg's books or James Clear books or any number of other books on habits, they said that the more things you can offload your brain and do automatically, reflexively, the better you are. You have reserves to make important decisions. And guess what? For me, waking up and deciding what I was going to wear on a photo shoot was, I would get decision fatigue because really my job was to go in and solve problems all day long. It's starting to sound like real estate, isn't it?
That's funny because I have the same concept, only instead of having a branded uniform, make it to where, and I accidentally did this, I will wear a hoodie or a tank top and yoga pants or shorts every single day. Now, if it's client meeting, maybe there's something different, but I make it to where there's less decisions I need to make every day because you can only make so many.
That's the point. That is the point. This is not a wardrobe podcast. In case you're wondering where we're going with this, it's not about wardrobes. It's about decision fatigue. And it's about getting really good at something, getting really good, so good that you know you're good at it. Other people know you're good at it. And guess what? Stick with it. Stick with the thing. And that's what we're going to talk about today is the boring elements of success. Because as we get started, we want to chase so many things. Kristi, just give me a handful of things that you thought you might chase in real estate or outside of real estate. I want to hear.
I mean, I wanted to be a professional beach volleyball player, before that basketball player, wanted to get into commercial real estate and development, and really just wanted to go have the world be my oyster and do a little bit of everything. until I realized one day that if you're the jack of all trades, you're the master of none. And the true skill and the true advantages in life come from really mastering and honing in on that one thing. And then once you do, you can bridge out and do many other avenues, but you start with that one.
Yeah. All the things. I wanted to be an optometrist, and I wanted to be a helicopter pilot, and I wanted to be an underwater welder. And like all these things are like things that I wanted to do, right? But like you said, you can't do everything. And in fact, there's very little joy in trying to do that. And so our podcast today is going to be real estate specific, but we're going to talk about a lot of different things that are outside of that, because real estate is only part of life. It's not the whole life. And this idea of chasing the next new shiny thing, and more importantly, chasing what is boring, is what is super important. It is a superpower. It is the subject of so many books. There's the book, The One Thing, Essentialism. These books are not talking about doing everything. They're talking about honing in and doing it. But the problem is, it seems boring. It just seems boring. And that's why this podcast is going to be valuable, I believe, to people who are just getting started. Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? As well as, and perhaps especially, to people who are already in real estate and perhaps already seeing a degree of success. And like, okay, I'm already successful in mobile homes, multifamily, single family, vacation rentals, commercial development, whatever it is. And then we get like, oh, I think I want to go over there and I want to chase that thing. Break it down, Kristi. Why would you say, because we shared some notes here ahead of time, that if your social media feed is boring, it's probably a good feed? What?
It really is, because if it's boring, then that means that, because real success comes from consistency and repetition and systems, and it's not the adrenaline rushes that we see. It's not the huge, massive winds and waterfalls that come. And I remember my uncle, he told me, he's like, never too high, never too low, this too shall pass. And I was always one in the past where I'd have a massive victory. We'd win this huge volleyball tournament, or we'd have this great deal with this great exit. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm on fire. We're the best in the world. And guess what? You come tumbling back down. And same way when you have this great exit on a deal or whatever, and you're so excited. Well, it always comes back to the medium. It's not that you don't celebrate the wins. It's just understanding that good, bad, right, or wrong, this too shall pass. So when you're consistent, when you're boring, then you can kind of skip the highs and lows and the peaks and the valleys and mitigate those more. And life actually becomes way more enjoyable.
Right. And this goes to the board. There's a really good book right here. I'm going to show you. Oh, let's see if we can get it. There you go. It's in focus if you're watching video. And if you're not, it is Mastery by George Leonard. It's a small book. He's the author of The Way of Aikido. And I don't know, he's like the 10th degree black belt in Aikido. It's ridiculous. It's insane. But he talks about the boring nature of practice that goes into mastery. That becoming a master is 99% boring. It is not the things that make the social media feed. It is not the things that you go out and have dinner for, but maybe we should, right? That's the point, is that the ability to stick with a thing and get really, really good at it requires the discipline to put up with a lot of boredom. And focusing on, I hate to say it sounds so cliche, but it's so true, the journey and the practice and the discipline of the everyday, because that's what leads to the high achieving, which, like you said, we should celebrate. But that brings me to something else, though. And there's another book that I read, and I can't remember the author's name. I think it's like Taz or something like that. It's called Happier. And he just, the author of this book was convinced that he would be happier if he won I believe it was pickleball or handball championships in his country. And he practiced and practiced and practiced. And he did, in fact, win the championship. And he was elated for a day. And he's like, wait a minute, this doesn't stick for long. And so he's talking about the journey and the illusion of goalposts. This idea that if you hit a goalpost, you hit a milestone. You don't want to hit a goalpost, I guess. That would be painful, wouldn't it? You pass a goalpost.
The double doink. You could hit the goalpost and you don't get the points, and you're Chicago Bears and you lose. But yeah.
There you go. Well, but the point is that when we move the goalposts, we delay that gratification, which in one way is good and another it's bad, because we may not celebrate it. But I guess what I'm telling you, as Kristi and I are sharing, is that if you set this thing up, the if then false scenario, if I hit $1 million in, let's say, assets, equity, if I had $1 million, if I just was a millionaire, technically a millionaire, then I would, and you see people fudge this all the time. It's like, I bought a property that's worth $1 million and I put 50,000 down. I'm a millionaire, because there's that feeling of like, I've arrived. And then there's actually like, no, you have $1 million in equity. And I'm going to ask you, Kristi, does that change you into a whole new person with a new outlook on life, and you wake up different every day?
I wish it did, but no, it did not. And it does not. And the biggest thing I just remember when I hit one of my massive goals. It's one that I wrote down as a kid and I put on our wall in the basement, and it said, shoot for the moon. If you miss, you'll be among the stars. And I had this massive goal of living on an island and having a pet dog and dolphins and being able to have, this dock outside and see sunrise and sunset. And I realized when I was 34 or 35, I had achieved that. And I was outside on the dock. A dolphin literally jumps by. My dog's right by my side. And I realized, wait, this giant goal that I never thought being a kid from small town Ohio would ever happened. And there's no fireworks. There's no anything. There's no great celebration. There's no amazing feeling inside. You just go, and it's great and all, but it really made me take a step back and go, okay, then what is important? So I had this goal that I was focusing on, and I was delaying gratification, and I was not enjoying the journey, and I was not appreciating the journey for this. And that really helps put life in perspective to go, wait, I need to appreciate every day and the little things in every day that bring me joy. That's actually what started my daily gratitude list, where every day at the end of the night, I will write down 3 things that I'm grateful for from that day. And it has nothing to do with stuff. It's always about the interactions, and it could be the random interaction at Publix when I'm at the grocery store where 2 humans talk to each other and bonded for that 10 seconds, 30 seconds. And that's what you remember.
Right. Now may be a good place to say, why are we talking about this on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast? It is because if you set up your I will be happy then, and you tie your emotional and personal success to an achievement, to a milestone or whatever, and you go past that and you don't feel different, that is the crummy side of the feelings, right? So if you look at our logo, it's got, it's a little kind of a circle. It's got a house on top, and the weather's all beautiful and everything. And down below is, lightning and stuff like this. It's a 2-sided coin, essentially. Is that if you think that if you hit this milepost, then everything is going to turn into amazing all the time, you will be disappointed. And furthermore, if you get to that point and you are sitting on your dock next to your boat, by your beach house, with a pool, watching the sunset with your dogs, and a dolphin goes by, you still get up the next morning. These things happen, which is not to say that these are bad things, but to say if you have premised your life and success on the if then, wow, that feels so awful when you realize it didn't change your life. Now, if you don't have any money, getting enough money to pay your groceries and your bills is a huge deal. I'm not making light of that at all. It's a big deal. It's worth the hustle and the work to get that, that modicum of success and security. But once you're past that, it's not as different as you would imagine.
Right. This is really like, once you have your basic needs met, once you have food on the table, you have your bills paid, and you're not worrying about, can I go out to dinner with friends tonight? And we started there. So we know this, but once you get to that point, and you think when you don't have money and you're always struggling to make ends meet, that money is the answer. It's going to solve all of the problems, and it's there. That's just the myth we tell ourselves while we're still hustling to get to the point where we have money. In reality, that's actually not the truth. And that's what made me end up starting my own company when I lived in California, because I'm hanging out with millionaires and billionaires, and both in commercial real estate and on the beach. And I'm like, wait, why is no one happy? They literally have everything. No, they had everything physical. They didn't have their mind right. They didn't have their heart right. They didn't have what truly matters in life right. And I'm so glad that I saw behind that curtain early, because it totally changed my life.
Right. And this is where we're going to circle back to social media and books and podcasts, and we could be this too, and we aim not to be, is the survivor bias, the idea of more, 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 more. I was reading last night in Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. We'll keep this family friendly here. I just want to read a line or two out of the book because it speaks to this idea of survivor bias, the idea of more, 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 and why we keep chasing things. It says, our lives today are filled with information from the extremes of the bell curve of human experience. Because in the social media business, that's what gets eyeballs. And eyeballs bring dollars. That's the bottom line. Yet the vast majority of life resides in the humdrum middle. The vast majority of life is unextraordinary. Indeed, quite average. The flood of extreme information has conditioned us to believe that exceptionalism is the new normal. I mean, think about it. When was the last time you turned into a podcast and they're like, hey, we'd like you to meet Jane. She's bought one small single family home per year. Like, what?
I was just thinking about that the other day when I was scrolling through my podcasts and I'm looking at the titles and the names of them. And I'm like, I don't care that they went from 1 to 1,300 doors because like that, what? No, that's not reality.
That's the point, is it is not reality. It does not represent a cross-section of humanity. If you want that, I would just suggest, just get a bag of chips, stand by the door of a Walmart. Just stand there, watch people go in and out. That is normal. That is reality. And if you feel you're super upscale, all right, go to Target, stand outside there, watch people go in and out, right? And that is reality. Those people are not showing up on a podcast this afternoon telling how they bought 40 homes in 40 weeks and now they quit their job. And you know what? Those things sound amazing. And then we start thinking, well, that's them. How come that's not me? Well, that's because what we're seeing is the top half of the top 1% of people at a given moment, right? Is people will show up on a podcast like, I did awesome. I got all these units. I got all these doors. It's amazing. And the podcast sounds like, man, they're incredible. And I'm thinking, oh man, I'm such a loser. It's like they're winning and I'm not. And what doesn't happen is the follow-up podcast 6 months later was like, oh yeah, I was over leveraged on that flip and we thought we were going to sell it for 400,000 and we sold it for 325 and the budget went over by $50,000. And so we actually ended up losing money. And yeah, that happened on 3 of the 4 flips we had this year. Well, there's one guy who tells the truth like that, Tyler Madden, and he'll tell it like it is. But most people don't. They won't. They will just, and you think because you saw the very peak, right, of their success as it was presented on social media, and you think, well, gosh, and guess what? It's person after person after person on that podcast because hey, that's what makes entertainment. That's what gets eyeballs. And everybody gets to thinking that's listening to these things like, wow, everybody's winning all the time. And it simply isn't true. Now, I'm not saying that everybody who shows up on a podcast ends up in a wreck on the other side. I'm not saying that. But there are some people who talk about the slow and steady way, and it's not as glamorous. I think of Chad Carson and the Small and Mighty Real Estate Investor. The kind of stuff he talks about is a lot slower, more methodical, less sensational, but I would hazard to say more sustainable.
Yep. I was just listening to a podcast yesterday. It was either All the Hacks or How to Money. And they had someone on who literally, it was a podcast on boring small businesses. And he's just talking through how they'll do it. And he said a couple times he and his wife will look at it because they maybe work 10 to 20 hours a week with their businesses and they've got a quality of life that they love. And they'll see other people and they'll go, wow, we only have 30 grand of income coming in per month and this person has 100,000. And then they'll stop comparing and they'll look at each other and go, yeah, but we don't know what that person does day in and day out every single hour of every day with their time. And we know for sure we have the quality of life that we want right now. And I think that all just comes back to getting clear on what do you want out of life? Once you get past, I was told to get a job and I work this 9 to 5 and blah, blah, blah. Once you get out of that rat race and you're able to start making choices, it's really important to take a time to pause and get clear on what is the life that you want to live. Do you want to keep chasing the Joneses? Do you want to get those peaks? Okay, then fine, go get it. But I think for so many of us that's not it. And that kind of goes back into mindset, which we talk a ton about. And
Yes.
it's, what truly fulfills us and what makes us happy.
100%. And when we compare ourselves, our idea of what winning would be 10 years ago, like, man, if I hit that, that would be winning. That would be amazing. Well, guess what? If you become a millionaire, you will meet a multimillionaire. You're like, that's success. And then you become a multimillionaire, and then you meet your first billionaire. And you're like, oh man, well, they can afford that whole ranch. I mean, I was just looking for a cabin, and then, it never stops. It doesn't, it's a hunger that never gets fulfilled. And related to that is the idea of making it. Like that there's some kind of finish line that we cross, and all of a sudden our life is completely and totally different. I've got a friend of mine, and he's a National Geographic photographer, has been for over 30 years. And is a good friend, good personal friend of mine. I remember that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to do photography for National Geographic. I thought that was the pinnacle of everything that I wanted to do. After working with them on a number of projects as an assistant or as a kind of a producer or a digital tech or whatever that I worked on, I was like, actually, that's not it. But during one of those assignments with my friend, I was like, man, it must be amazing to be there, at the pinnacle. Because in photojournalism, there was a time when National Geographic for magazine photographers was like, that was it. And he said something shocking to me. He said, no, you can't relax. You can't stop. Because as soon as you stop on the summit of the mountain, there's a long line of people behind you ready to push you off and take your place. And I put that picture in my head, like standing on a summit, surrounded by people who can't wait to push you off and take your place. Like, that's horrible. How much stress is that? Like I had pictured it like, oh, once you get there, you just kind of get to put on your red bathrobe, kick up your slippers and, have your drink and just relax.
Like I joined this club up here at this club. We're just sitting back, putting our feet up. Like, what? You mean it sound like that?
And the picture that I had in my head and the reality that was presented to me were so different, so opposite. Like it's even more stressful there. It's even more like worried about this and that and the other. And it's true. I'm not speaking badly about a geographic or my friend or any of these things. I'm simply talking about a life reality, regardless of what your position is. If you're the CEO sitting in the corner, if you don't deliver those numbers, guess what? There's a board who's out there like, you know what? Your numbers weren't good enough. We're going to, you get your little parachute here. You hope it's big enough and bye, we're going to get somebody else. So that corner office is actually pretty stinking precarious. So,
well, even in athletes, LeBron James just passed this huge milestone and he hit 50,000 points in a game. But that wasn't the milestone that was most important. It was also in the game that he played that he was player of the month. He is 40 years old. 20 years ago, he was player of the month. So the fact that he has sustained that for 20 years is one of the most insane, incredible things. It's kind of like Tom Brady during his massive run. Those are anomalies. That is not real life. That is not every person. What you see, and you kind of see it a little bit of Tom Brady and the struggles that he's had and LeBron and the dedication of showing up every single day, but they are sacrificing other parts of their life so they can be 100% present for their trade, for their craft, that they can become that good and that consistent for that long.
Yeah, the trade-offs, I think, is a thing we don't often think about. I was listening to a podcast quite a while back, and the speaker said, you may say to yourself, I want that person's life. What you really want is you want their success. Let's be candid about that. Well, you might not want their life at all, because what it took to get what you see might not be a price you want to pay at all. I went to a photo workshop once years ago, and I got to meet many, many famous photographers, pictures that they hang, you would know them. Okay. You would know these pictures, dozens and dozens of pictures that have been on the cover of the most famous magazines, outsides of buildings, stuff like that. And I met some of their families and I saw some of the backside of what this was. And I thought, I do not want to pay that price to have that fame. Right. And again, I'm not speaking ill. Maybe they wanted to make that trade. Maybe that's just the trade they got. Right. But my point is we think we want that success, but we have no idea what they paid to get that, right? A friend of mine has this little saying. It's like, I used to think I wanted a job, and then I realized all I wanted was a paycheck, right? We keep thinking that we want the payoff, but we really don't want what comes between here and the payoff. And that's not how life works.
That's so true. On the flip side, when I had started my company, I at the time used social media in a way that I'm not going to complain about life and how much I'm grinding and what I'm doing. I'm going to be like, cool, we're at the beach playing volleyball today, and I'm post happy things that are outside and nothing about my business. And I remember moving in with a roommate in California and a very good friend. And she had no idea. She just thought that somehow I hit the lucky stick and that it all just came so easy to me and money just grew on trees. Still haven't found those. But after living together, she realized, oh my gosh, Kristi's up grinding in the morning and Kristi is working late at night and Kristi is putting in crap tons of hours. And she not only told me, like, holy cow, I had no idea what you did. I completely appreciate what you do now. But she also told a lot of our friends, like, there's a whole lot of work that goes into the success we see on the outside. And I'm not one to like be braggy or showy. I just, they could see the things that I got as part of that success, and the things that I was able to do, but they had no idea what was behind the scenes. So there's a whole lot of boring stuff that is not worth putting on social media, but the grind is real and nothing comes easy. There is no easy.
Yes, that is so true. We think it's like, must be nice. And those are some of my least favorite words, because when people say those, they want the result, but not the work, right? There was a time back over a decade ago when I was looking at buying our first vacation rental and a friend was looking at buying a truck. And I was like, oh man, okay, we're going to do it. So the money down that we put onto this vacation rental and putting it into renovating it and so on was less than this person put on into a truck. Was a nicer truck, and my car sucked at the time. I had replaced the engine 3 times. That was a debacle. Just word to the wise, do not get a Subaru Outback Turbo from the mid 2000s. Okay, they're just famous for turbo failures, and it ruins your entire engine. So I got this kind of a sucky car, right? And this person's got a new, very nice truck. Now, I can't say why that person chose what they chose, right? I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm saying they are different. And while I'm calling the tow trucks and saying, can you put my car on a flatbed and can you get me home and stuff like this, person's tooling around in a really nice truck because I chose to put that money into a rental property. Fast forward 10 years, and that rental property I sold and traded for a condo right across the beach. I don't have beach views in Maui. Okay. So I traded that. And now that truck it's long gone. It's just, there's nothing to it. And it would be easy on the outside to say, must be nice to have a place in Maui. It's like, yeah, but were you calling a tow truck and saying, oh yeah, I'm in the neighborhood, so-and-so, can you come get me? My engine blew up again. Because I am choosing to trade a nice vehicle to put that money into real estate. It's a conscious choice. And did I pay for it? Yeah. There were more than once I'm sitting beside the side of the interstate calling a tow truck again. Yeah, I moved to Toyota, much happier with that. But my point is that we made choices. We made choices in our family. We've been married over 30 years. And we did not buy a new car for ourselves until we owned 7 properties. Okay? Most people don't do that. They're totally the other way around. It's like, let's go get a brand new car as soon as I get a job. And again, I'm not dissing that. I'm saying that there are choices. And the cop out of saying like, must be nice is like, no, there were choices made, right?
And I would challenge, right, there were choices made that got us to this point. And I would challenge people, when you want to give yourself an out and you want to say must be nice or you're so lucky to someone else, it's typically because you're deflecting from yourself to not have to look inward and go, what choices could I potentially make that are different? Because we're no different than anyone else. We just made different choices. We made different sacrifices that were worth it to us because we knew if we made sacrifices early, then we would have wins in the long run where we could have more freedom of choice and time.
Yeah. And if you think, if you're listening to this right now and you're like, yeah, well, they just got all lucky, you need to go back and listen to some of our past episodes because we have both gotten beat up a lot. And we both still have some, we texting each other. Kristi's like, well, looks like a new HVAC system here. Well, they trashed the house after eviction here. And just these things are ongoing and they're constant. But people don't like that because it's not shiny, it's not pretty, it's not attractive, it's not sexy. And because we just want the money. We want the beach chair, watching the sunset, with a drink in my hand. That's all we want. We do not want the work between here and there. And guess what we're telling you is that is the thing. The work between here and there is the thing. That is the 99.99% of what this all is. And that's why this particular podcast episode is talking about the boring elements required for success. So let's talk about a little bit the shift from hustle to fulfillment. What does that mean?
Really just understanding and changing our mindset from like what you just said. It's not the destination. There are no destinations. Destinations are like the horizon. You see it, but you will never get there. And it will never be that part that fills you up. And when you embrace that and you understand, wait, it is the journey. It is the waking up at 5 a.m. every day and doing a certain set of habits every single day, because I know if I do those habits, it's going to lead to the outcome that I want. And it's boring, it's repetitive. But if you start to embrace those moments and you start to realize that all we have is right now, we can't go back, we can't go forward. We can worry about the past, we can think and worry about the future, but all we truly have is right now. And if you just are present and you take the time to be there and just enjoy and change your mindset from, oh, I have to do X, Y, and Z today. What if you said, I get to do this today?
Yeah, it may sound like some kind of semantic little trick that you're doing, but it isn't. It's a true mindset shift. And it is, the growth is in the details. I've got a home gym here, and I know Kristi does exercising too, is you don't get exercise without resistance. You just don't. If you see, there's people out there who take, I'll call it shortcuts, with all kinds of chemistry, better living through chemistry, but they still have to work out, right? It still requires effort. There isn't shortcuts to this stuff. And the shortcuts they end up in pain and disappointment because it's more about the journey than it is about the destination, kind of realizing where we are and why we're doing this. We mentioned the fisherman's parable. Most of you have probably heard this.
I love this
the guy
one.
in a Central American country, we'll just say it's a generic one, he's just taking a nap under a tree at noon. Businessman rolls up in a limo. Guy jumps out and goes, see, this is what I'm talking about. If you guys would work harder, then this country would have success. And so the guy is taking a nap, goes, what do you mean? He's like, what do you do? He's like, well, I'm a fisherman. Like, well, okay. So how many boats do you have? Like, well, just got one boat. Like, okay. So here's the deal. If you follow my business plan, you can eventually get a fleet of boats. Oh, wow. Then what do I do? Well, then we could get, form a large corporation, and then you would export this stuff. And it's like, so you were just here taking a nap, and then, just tell me what your life is like. That's just not very fulfilling. I was like, well, I went out this morning, went fishing, caught a fish, sold it at the market. I'm taking a nap right now. I'll clean up the boat later and, go home and have dinner with my lovely wife. And then we'll go out to the park with our kids and, just enjoy the sunset. The businessman goes, see, that's what's wrong with this stuff. It's just lazy. If you were to do this and scale up your business and have a fleet of ships, and it'd be a lot of work, just tireless grinding. You got to do this. And the fisherman guy goes, so what would I do, once I had all this work and I put in all this time and this grind and the risk? And he goes, well, then you'd sell it. And the fisherman's like, oh, so I would sell all this. And said, well, then what would I do? I said, well, then you would be rich enough to be able just to have your own boat. Go out and catch a fish in the morning. Or take a nap in the afternoon. Go home and hang out with your family and watch the sunset by the beach. You see the irony in this, right? The guy's living that life. And I think we do not often enough assess, wait a minute, what is it we're going for? What am I willing to pay to get there? These are important things. As we close up here, as we're heading towards it, we got one final point here, is about talking about taking action versus overthinking. Because we could mistake the boring kind of things like, I'm thinking, I'm strategizing, I'm doing, this kind of stuff. Kristi, tell me about this ex-spy here. She's talking about taking action.
Evie has come out on tons of podcasts and has her book, and I absolutely just love her perspective on things. But one of the notes that she says is that you can't get more data from standing still. So you have to take action. And by taking action, like say you're in the middle of the woods and you're lost. Well, you're not going to find your way home just standing there looking around. You're going to take steps in a direction and start to see, oh, maybe the sun's over here and I know it's, afternoon. So that's west. And so I need to actually go south. So you get more information once you take action. And the fact that you just make a choice and you go, this is what I'm going to do, doesn't mean that you have to then finish that. It means as you collect more data, you can go, no, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, I did that with my rental portfolio. We got to a point where it was fine for us to self-manage. And I do not want another one because I know what that will take to keep going to the next level. I also know that I don't want multifamily. I don't want large multifamily because I know what that brings from a management standpoint. And even if you have a property manager, you're managing the manager. So I'm very conscientious of, I don't want more doors to have more doors. I want a quality of life that allows me to relax and enjoy and have freedom of choice and have freedom of my time. So it's just, you're allowed to make changes along the way, but you do have to take action to be able to know what you do and don't want.
So I'm going to push pause on that just a second and say, let's stop and look at what Kristi's social media feed would look like when she made this choice. She's taking action, right? But the action she chose in this case is to not pursue more doors. That will make an amazing social media post, won't it? It's like, here's me at the table instead of at the signing table with thumbs up like, yeah, it's closing day. It's like, I penciled this out and decided not to buy a property.
I decided that was going to take way too much of my time then.
Right.
And you go, wait,
what kind of, yeah, boring social media feed. You sat at your kitchen table and decided not to buy something?
And then you took your dog on an hour walk around the neighborhood. Okay, we've seen that house before. You've seen that dog that your dog talks to and sniffs. That's boring.
So what we're saying here is that's what success looks like. Success looks like sitting down and penciling it out and saying, nope, I don't think I want to do that. Let's look in this next direction. Okay, my head's getting a little bit cloudy here. Let's just take a walk and go out and do this. That is what success looks like. It's not necessarily, if it's for you, fine, go for it. The fancy custom tailored suit or the $5,000 purse or the $20,000 watch or what, if that's you, go for it. Okay. But success can look a lot more boring and still feel great. And if you've decided this is what my idea of success is, this is what it feels like, this is what it looks like, it's okay. We do not have to always be chasing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
I've been on a lot of podcasts recently and just had different people ask me, well, what are you doing now? What deals are you doing? And this and that. And being in development, it's been really tough to get something in commercial to pencil that makes sense, that doesn't come with a ton of leverage and a crap ton of risk. And we have probably evaluated 75 to 100 deals across the country and said no to every single one because it doesn't work. In fact, we just finished a webinar on a multifamily project we were going to joint venture with a property owner in Florida, and it's not going to work. And I'm not going to force something to work just to say I'm doing it. And it had me get really clear. It's like, no, we're looking, we're working. There's a couple projects that are in the background that when a couple things shift in the market, we'll be able to move forward on. And it's just accepting that sometimes, keep working towards things that you want to do, but be willing to say no. And if the end result is your dog gets more walks around the neighborhood, or you start taking pickleball lessons and get better, or you become a better snowboarder, like that's great too, because it's not more to do more, for me at least, is not a fulfilling way to live life.
Yeah. I remember it was a little bit ago, Kathy Fetke, she's a personality in the real estate world that I respect. She said, maybe we should not have as our metric how many doors you have. Maybe it should be how many free hours you have in a day, or your freedom of choice to who you're going to hang out with or where you're going to go. And I personally think that that's a much, much better metric to have. That this is personal. And so I'm going to encourage you to come up with what is your measure of success. What does success look like for you? Sit down and really think about that. Well, is it, a garage full of brand new black cars? Is that what success looks like to you? And honestly, how will that make you feel and for how long? So I encourage you, as you're listening to this, to take a moment, close your eyes, think about, what does success look like for me? And am I willing to pay the price that it takes to get there? There's always a price. And decide, is that a direction I want to go? Now, for me, doing the freelance photography, my wife now works PRN, just, part-time. She's available when she's available. Does she make less? Yes. Right. And so there are some sacrifices with that. But also, in a few days, we're headed out to Belize. That will have happened long ago by the time this airs. But we're taking 8 days off to go down and work on a children's home. I'll be doing the same things I do up here with real estate. I'll be working with a chop saw, cutting some wood, putting in some repairs on this children's home. But guess what? I didn't have to ask anyone for permission to go. I just blocked off my calendar and said, no, I'm not taking work during this time. And she let work know, I'm just not available on these dates. And for us, that's what winning looks like. Now, is there a price for that? Dollars? Yeah, absolutely. But fulfillment wise, that's a choice we're making, right? So as you listen, I want you to think about this for yourself. Decide, as you're getting into the real estate game, why are you getting into it? Is it so that you can go to a workshop and say, excuse me, I have 1,100 doors and I have a question for you, right? Is that why you're doing it? Or is something better? Kristi.
I was having a conversation with someone on LinkedIn the other day about the fire community, and when you told people to just pause and really fast forward and imagine that you got it, then what? Because I'm very curious. The fire community does a great job of getting to that end goal so they can retire. And a lot of times people can do it in their 30s and 40s. Being in my late 30s, I know that, really, am I just going to stop doing everything when I get to that point? So I was curious and I was asking, I said, well, how many of these fire people actually stop and they go sip cocktails on the beach or travel in an RV around the country? And the person who I was talking with, he said, well, actually, that's how I got into real estate, because I hit fire and then realized I really actually wanted the freedom of time and the freedom of choice to be able to choose how I spend my day and what I do. So I think what you said is so powerful in that if you pause and you fast forward and you go, okay, I'm rushing so hard to get to here. Imagine you got there, and then imagine what you would do afterwards, and then maybe work that backwards and change what you're doing every day now to then get to the real goal of what you really want.
100%. That's, in a nutshell, what this episode has been about, is about the often boring, probably should be boring, repetitive steps that it takes to get to success, and what that actually can be in your life and in your heart, and what these things are, and the illusion, the mirage of what these things are not. Just bringing this out to you, highlight these things to you, because nobody told me this. Right? It was all about the goal I'm going to hit and how it's going to be amazing and it's going to be incredible. And I hit some of these things. I was like, this isn't it. This is not the thing. And we're just giving you a heads up that this is a real part of thing. Feel like you're a failure if your life, you wake up like, I'm going to do the same thing I did yesterday, which is the same thing I did last month, which is the same thing I did last year, which is what I've been doing for a decade. You know what? That's more often than not what success looks like. And it's more likely to be sustainable than hopping from one shiny thing to the next shiny thing to the next shiny thing, doing something so amazing and extraordinary and shocking that you're on podcast after podcast because you're doing something new every time. I can't predict the future, but I'm going to put my money on the slow and steady. And this is why we're here in this podcast, in the real estate pessimist, is to tell you the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing and the life that goes along with it. Thanks for joining us. Please leave us a review, forward this to a friend, leave a comment down below. Let us know, is there somewhere that you've kind of reset your goals and thinking like, I used to think this, but now I think this. That's a better life for me. Thank you for joining us.